The neighborhood was a tapestry woven from diverse threads, a mix of young families, retirees, and couples savoring their autumn years. Yet, in this otherwise serene cul-de-sac, there was one snag: Karen. Her presence was like a pebble in a shoe, a constant reminder of discomfort in an otherwise pleasant stroll. Our house, a modest brick affair shaded by an old oak with limbs that stretched protectively over the roof, was my haven. My dog Baxter, a gentle Labrador with eyes like melted chocolate, was my companion in this suburban slice of life. His energy was infectious, his loyalty unwavering. Karen's arrival had been heralded by a flurry of rules and regulations delivered with the precision of a military drill. Her voice, an ever-present reminder of authority, cut through the neighborhood like a foghorn in the night. She was the self-appointed sentinel of our homeowners association, a role she relished with evangelical fervor. Her first foray into control came in the guise of friendly advice, lawn care tips, unsolicited critiques on holiday decorations, reminders about trash can placements. She wielded the HOA handbook like a sacred text, each page a sermon in her crusade for neighborship perfection. In her wake, eye rolls were exchanged, whispers of frustration floated just beneath the surface. I preferred to remain on the periphery of these skirmishes, choosing instead to cultivate my own pocket of peace. Baxter and I spent our mornings in the garden, him nosing the earth. With curiosity, me, with a mug of coffee and a book. Our silence was a balm to the clamor outside. It was on one such morning that the tranquility fractured. Karen appeared, her countenance a storm cloud of indignation. Her complaint was simple yet absurd. Baxter had attacked her while she was on her morning power walk. Within the quiet confines of my mind, disbelief bloomed Baxter. He was more likely to greet an intruder with a wagging tail than with teeth bared in aggression. I listened, nodding at her theatrics, while my mind sifted through the accusation like a sieve, catching pebbles of truth, discarding the rest. The accusations spread like wildfire, igniting whispers and sidelong glances. Karen's words carried weight, her influence a gravitational pull that bent the neighborhood's perception. There was a certain irony in the situation. Her reign of pettiness had finally escalated beyond the mundane into the realm of the absurd. I watched her retreat, her satisfaction. Tangible my thoughts, a quiet storm of resolve. My intention was not revenge, but clarity. In the end, truth was the best antidote to her venom. Our neighborhood was a stage, and she had thrown down the gauntlet with an accusation so outrageous it was almost comical. I vowed to let the performance play out, confident in the knowledge that the truth, vivid and undeniable, would eventually unfurl in radiant clarity. The morning after the chaos, the neighborhood seemed eerily peaceful, as if the world had pressed pause. Dew clung to each blade of grass, shimmering under the tender light of dawn. I took a deep breath, filling my lungs with the crisp air, hoping to cleanse away the remnants of yesterday's ordeal. My dog. Max bounded beside me, blissfully unaware of the storm that was brewing beneath the surface of our suburban facade. The tranquility was short-lived. By mid-morning, the community bulletin had arrived in the form of a passive-aggressive email from Karen. Her accusations had transformed into a barrage of absurd rules, each one more ludicrous than the last. We were prohibited from letting our dogs out before 9 a.m. or after 6 p.m., and all pets must be muzzled, no exceptions. The email was a minefield of exclamation points and bolded text, a digital embodiment of her exasperation. Max lay at my feet as I read it, his eyes pools of innocence and trust. I felt a surge of anger, not just for myself but for him. He was being punished for existing, for daring to live next to the self-appointed queen of the cul-de-sac. Karen's list of rules was like a dictator's manifesto, written in the ink of paranoia and control. The citations came next, delivered with the precision of a military operation. Each envelope bore the emblem of the HOA, a symbol now tarnished by her vendetta. Violations for everything from unapproved garden gnomes to unauthorized plant height. She was trying to break us with bureaucracy, strangling us with red tape until we choked on her petty tyranny. I noticed the neighbors whispering more than usual, their glances lingering a second too long. Gossip spread through the community like a stain. Dark and indelible, Karen had crafted her narrative, painting herself as the victim of a vicious animal and its negligent owner. Her words were seeds sown into the fertile ground of suburbia, sprouting rumors that twisted and coiled like ivy around the truth. And yet beneath her veneer of righteousness, I sensed desperation. Her need to control was a mask for something deeper, more fragile. In these quiet moments, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. The tension mounted with each passing day. An invisible thread pulled tauter and tauter, threatening to snap. The others began to keep their distance, wary of the chaos that seemed to orbit around our home. The air was thick with unspoken judgments, each silence an accusation. One afternoon the doorbell rang, a sharp sound that sliced through the stillness of the house. I opened the door to find Karen standing there, her expression a carefully curated mix of disdain and pity. She wanted to speak, but I cut her off with a look, the kind that said more than any words could. I closed the door, the click echoing in the hallway. Behind me, Max wagged his tail, oblivious to the theater of suburban warfare unfolding around us. In that moment, surrounded by the quiet strength of my home, I knew the truth. Karen's reign was built on lies, and like all lies, it was destined to crumble. For now, we would wait. The Bodycam footage was our silent witness, our ace in the hole. I imagined the day it would be revealed, the moment when the scales of justice would tip back in our favor. The truth would illuminate the shadows, and Karen's empire of deceit would fall. Until then, life continued, a tapestry of the mundane and the extraordinary, woven from the threads of resilience and quiet defiance. In the end, I knew we would stand unbroken, for there is a kind of power in silence, a strength in simply enduring. The morning sun draped the neighborhood in a soft golden glow, as if trying to cast a warm veil over the tension that simmered just below the surface. I stood at the window, coffee cup in hand, watching the world wake up. The streets were quiet, save for the occasional passing car or a distant bark echoing in the early hours. Serenity on the facade, chaos beneath. The contrast was almost artistic. Karen's accusations hung in the air like a sour note in a harmonious symphony. She had claimed my dog Max had attacked her, her voice shrill, her theatrics Broadway ready. Her desperation to cling to her power within the HOA was almost palpable, like a wilting flower trying to stand tall despite the inevitable. I had a plan, subtle but effective. Documentation was my weapon of choice. Every interaction meticulously recorded, every detail captured with the precision of a watchmaker. Emails, letters, photos, the truth piece by piece like a mosaic, slowly revealing its true image. An art form of sorts, turning her lies into a canvas of undeniable facts. The police body cam footage was the masterpiece. A silent witness to her deceit, capturing the moment she turned the accusation into a spectacle. Max, ever the gentle soul, sat unfazed by the chaos swirling around him, tail wagging with an innocence Karen could never comprehend. It was ironic, almost poetic. The truth wrapped in digital clarity, contradicting her fabricated tale. The HOA meeting was a theater of its own. Neighbors gathered whispers, weaving through the crowd like tendrils of smoke. She stood at the front, confident in her delusion, ready to wield her power like a scepter. I watched from the sidelines, a quiet observer, the calm in her storm. My moment arrived, subtle but inevitable. The footage played the room silent, save for the rustle of disbelief. Her facade crumbled piece by piece as the truth laid itself bare. The irony was delicious, like a sweet aftertaste lingering long after the meal was done. Her eyes, once sharp and commanding, now danced with panic, the power she held slipping like sand through her fingers. She had underestimated the quiet strength of truth, of preparation, of patience. In that instant, I realized something profound. Power isn't always loud. Sometimes it's the quiet, unyielding resolve to stand firm against the tide, to let the truth speak louder than any accusation, to watch wait and strike when the moment is ripe. Karen's defeat was quiet. No grand gestures, no dramatic exits, just a retreat. Her influence dwindling to a whisper, and as the meeting ended, I walked out into the cool evening air. Max by my side, his tail wagging in rhythm with my heartbeat. In the end, justice wasn't about victory or defeat. It was about setting things right. About letting truth shine through, even in the face of falsehoods. It was about the quiet power of patience, the art of subtlety. And as the stars began to dot the night sky, I knew the story had reached its rightful conclusion. The morning light filtered through the sheer curtains, casting a soft glow on the kitchen table, where I sat, wondering how I'd become the unwitting protagonist of a suburban drama. My coffee steamed gently, its warmth, a stark contrast to the gathering chill in the pit of my stomach. Karen's allegations were a stain. I couldn't ignore her accusations about Max. My gentle giant of a dog were as preposterous as they were malicious. But now I had the truth. The day the police body cam footage arrived was the day her narrative began to unravel. It was my silent ally, a window into the reality she tried to obscure with her fabrications. I had watched it once enough to know that my decision to fight back wasn't just impulsive vindication. It was justice. I carefully laid out the evidence across the table as if I were setting a battlefield. Emails, letters from neighbors, a signed statement from the officer who had reviewed the footage. Each piece felt like a small victory, a step closer to restoring my peace. The next step required precision, a dance of legalities and careful maneuvering. I reached for my phone, dialing the number of the attorney who had agreed to guide me through the labyrinth of homeowner association politics and potential defamation claims. Our conversations were a beacon of clarity amid the fog of Karen's slander. With every legal form I signed, I felt the weight of her lies begin to lift. There was a certain irony in using the very rules she loved to wield against others to dismantle her claims. The HOA, once a symbol of her power, now became the stage for her undoing. I documented everything meticulously, each detail, a thread in the tapestry that would expose her deceit. As the days edged forward, I noticed a shift in the neighborhood's atmosphere. An undercurrent of whispers, the curious glances from neighbors who once stood aloof, now seemed sympathetic, even supportive. The quiet strength of truth had begun to ripple outward, touching those who had remained indifferent or afraid to confront her tyranny. One afternoon, as I walked Max through the neighborhood, I saw her. Karen stood on her porch. Her posture, rigid eyes narrowed. Gone was the veneer of control that had once defined her presence. In its place, a flicker of uncertainty. She knew just as well as I did that the facade she'd so carefully constructed was crumbling. There was no need for confrontation, no satisfaction to be gleaned from her discomfort. My victory was the return of my peace, the assurance that my world and Max's would not be dictated by her falsehoods. In the end, it wasn't about vengeance. It was about reclaiming what had been unjustly threatened. The legal proceedings would unfold in their own time, a slow but certain march toward resolution. And I would be ready, not with anger, but with the quiet confidence that truth was always my greatest ally. As I returned home, Max trotted alongside me, his tongue lolling blissfully, unaware of the storm that had passed. In his innocence, he reminded me of what truly mattered. Home was safe again, and our lives, once disrupted by the clamor of deceit, had found their rhythm. The morning after the storm is always eerily calm, a veneer of serenity that belies the tumult beneath. As I step out of my house, the air is crisp, tinged with the scent of wet earth and the last whispers of last night's rain. The world feels newly painted, the colors sharper, more precise. Karen's accusations had fractured our community like lightning cleaving a tree, the jagged edges raw and exposed. People whispered behind closed doors, uncertainty hanging thick in the air. But today was different. The evidence, stark and undeniable, had been replayed in the echoing chambers of memory. The police bodycam footage, a silent witness, had unraveled Karen's web of deceit with an unerring clarity. My dog Rex had lain tranquil at my feet, unperturbed by Karen's theatrics. Her claims of an attack dissolved like sugar in the rain, leaving only the bitter residue of her lies. The neighborhood gathered, drawn together like moths to a flame. Curiosity mingled with anticipation. The cul-de-sac was cluttered with bodies, a haphazard mosaic of faces reflecting relief, guilt, and vindication. The quiet murmur of conversation hummed like an electric current coursing through the crowd, sparking and crackling with each whispered revelation. Rex sat beside me, his eyes a calm reservoir amid the tumult, a gentle reminder of the truth that had been unearthed. He leaned against my leg, a solid, grounding presence. Karen stood on the periphery, her posture a study in tightly wound defiance. Her eyes flitted across the crowd, searching for something: recognition, sympathy, a lifeline. But the community had shifted. The tides of opinion turned. Her isolation was palpable, a shadow that clung to her like a second skin. An almost imperceptible nod from our community's president marked the beginning of what felt like a slow, inevitable tide. The acknowledgement, the unspoken apology rippled through the air. It was a quiet, powerful moment, an unvoiced admission that we had been drawn into Karen's drama, and now we had to unravel ourselves from its grasp. People approached in ones and twos, their apologies quiet, sincere. An elderly neighbor offered a tentative smile, a small, fragile bridge built over the chasm of misunderstanding. Another clasped my shoulder, the weight of their hand, a reassuring balm. Each gesture a brick in the wall of community we were rebuilding. I watched as the collective gaze shifted away from me and towards Karen. The whispers grew louder, an undercurrent of discontent. She was now the focal point of scrutiny, the subject of the shifting winds of opinion. Her fortress of manipulation had crumbled, leaving her exposed and vulnerable. Across the distance, her eyes met mine. A fleeting moment of understanding passed between us, an acknowledgement of the roles we had played in this sordid drama. Her gaze faltered and she turned away. The crowd began to disperse, the morning sun casting long shadows that stretched across the pavement, swallowing the remnants of the night's upheaval. The world continued to turn unperturbed by our small human dramas. Rex nudged my hand, a silent reminder of the simplicity inherent in truth. As I walked back to my house, the winds of change whispered through the leaves, carrying with them the promise of new beginnings. We would heal our community stronger for having weathered the storm. The echoes of Karen's deception would fade, leaving behind a clear sky and the brilliant light of day. Today the world felt vivid and alive. A quiet triumph whispered in the air shared by all who had witnessed the fall and rise of truth. For now, that was enough.